Once upon a time, in a small town, there lived a girl named Adanna who was known for her beauty, intelligence, and kindness. She attended King's Academy High School, and her name seemed to echo through every hallway and classroom. Adanna wasn't just well-liked, she was adored. She excelled in every subject, always ranking at the top of her class and shining brighter than anyone else. Her beauty and grace were unmatched, and her natural charm captivated everyone. When she entered a room, all eyes turned to her. Whether it was a debate, a sports match, or a musical performance, Adanna gave her best in everything, winning competitions and praise with ease. It was as if there was something magical about her. Her talents seemed almost unreal. Despite her success, Adanna was lonely. People admired her from afar, but rarely tried to get close to her. Many of her classmates, especially the other girls, felt envious in her presence. They wanted to understand her secret, to know how she managed to be perfect at everything. Yet they couldn't bring themselves to get close to her. Adanna seemed like she was in a league of her own, and it made others feel small in comparison. So they kept their distance. A few brave ones tried to be her friend, but they soon felt overshadowed and withdrew, unable to handle the attention Adanna drew. Still, Adanna walked with confidence, her head held high, moving with a grace that made her seem like she came from another world entirely. And in truth, she did. Behind her intelligence and beauty, Adanna held a secret that nobody at King's Academy could ever guess. She was a mermaid. Her parents, Emeka and Kioma, had known this secret since she was born. Adanna was their only child, a precious gift after many years of waiting. For a long time, they had tried everything to have a child. They visited doctors, prayed, and performed rituals, but nothing worked. Desperate, they finally decided to seek help from an old tradition in their family. One evening, years before Adanna was born, Emeka and Kioma went to a hidden river deep in a forest near their home. There were legends of a river goddess who blessed families with children. Though many saw it as a story from the past, Emeka and Kioma were ready to believe in anything. They brought offerings and knelt by the river, praying with all their hearts for a child. To their surprise, their prayers were answered. Not long after, Kioma became pregnant. Her pregnancy was smooth, and when Adanna was born, they felt like their hearts were overflowing with happiness. But the blessing came with a warning, one that they couldn't ignore. In the months leading to Adanna's birth, the river goddess appeared in their dreams, cautioning them. Your daughter will live between two worlds. She belongs to the water, but she will walk on land with you. Protect her, and do not reveal her secret to anyone who may not understand. At first, Emeka and Kioma didn't think much of the warning. To them, Adanna seemed like any other baby. But as she grew older, they began to notice strange things. Whenever her legs were touched by water for too long, her skin would start to shimmer, and then her feet would transform into a beautiful, scaled tail, just like a fish. Adanna was truly a mermaid, a child of both land and sea. Fearful of what this could mean for her, Emeka and Kioma decided to be very careful. They avoided taking her to places with water, stayed away from rivers and pools, and even made sure she was never outside during the rainy season. Birthday parties were difficult too. While the other children would happily play in the pool, Adanna had to sit on the sidelines, with her mother coming up with reasons to keep her away from the water. But why? Adanna would often ask, her innocent eyes full of confusion. Why can't I swim with my friends? Kioma would only smile and reply, You're special, my dear, swimming isn't for you. This answer never fully satisfied Adanna, but she listened to her parents, even if it made her feel sad watching others enjoy the water. As she grew older, her questions became harder to ignore, and her parents found it increasingly difficult to make excuses. When Adanna turned 13, Emeka and Kioma realized they could no longer keep the truth from her. One evening, while Adanna sat at the dinner table, she looked across at her parents with a look of determination. I need to know why, she said, her voice steady. Why can't I play in the rain? Why can't I swim? Why do my legs change whenever I take a bath? I'm not a little kid anymore. I deserve the truth. Emeka and Kioma exchanged anxious glances, knowing this day would come, but never quite ready for it. Finally, after a long silence, Emeka took a deep breath and began. Adanna, he said gently, we've kept something from you, not to deceive you, but to protect you. Adanna's heart pounded as she searched their faces. Protect me from what? Kioma reached over and took Adanna's hand, her gaze tender yet serious. Protect you from people who won't understand who you really are, she explained softly. Adanna's confusion deepened. What do you mean? She asked. Kioma hesitated, then took a deep breath, glancing at Emeka. Do you remember the stories we told you about the river goddess? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adanna nodded slowly. Yes, you said she blessed you so that I could be born. Emeka leaned forward, his voice both loving and serious. That's true, but there's more to it. You weren't just a blessing, you were a gift, a very special gift. Kioma's voice trembled as she continued. You aren't like other children, Adanna. You're connected to the river as much as you are to this home. You're a mermaid. Adanna's eyes widened, her mind spinning. A mermaid like in the stories? Yes, Emeka answered softly, nodding. Just like that. For a moment, the room was silent. Adanna stared at her parents, struggling to make sense of what she had just heard. But how? Why? I don't understand. Kioma squeezed her daughter's hand tightly. When you were born, the goddess told us that you would be extraordinary, Adanna. You would be able to live both in the water and on land, but the world can be harsh to those who are different. That's why we've tried to keep your secret safe, so you wouldn't have to face fear or judgment from people who don't understand. Oh, why can't I play in the rain with my friends? Why can't I swim? Adanna's voice was filled with sadness and confusion. Emeka explained carefully, if too much water touches you, your legs will change, your secret will be revealed, and people might react with fear, they might not understand, and they could even try to hurt you. Adanna's eyes welled with tears, as the reality of her life sank in. So I'll never get to be like other kids, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kioma's face softened. You're special, Adanna, more special than anyone else, and that's something to be proud of, she assured her. Adanna sat quietly, absorbing her parents' words. For years, she had questioned why she felt different, why she had to stay away from water while her friends could play freely. Now, she finally knew the truth, but the knowledge didn't make things easier. Since that evening, Adanna showed a maturity far beyond her years. She stopped asking to join pool parties or run in the rain. She understood, on a deep level, the importance of protecting her secret, not just for herself, but for her parents' sake as well. In the months that followed, Adanna poured herself into her studies, focusing on the one thing she could control, her academic achievements. Her dedication intensified, and she excelled in everything she did. But there was one area where her restraint was tested, the school's swimming team. King's Academy had a competitive sports program, and swimming was a celebrated event. With Adanna's natural grace and dedication, she seemed like the perfect candidate for the team. Her teachers and classmates admired her for her athletic talent, and some of her coaches even encouraged her to try out for swimming. One afternoon, during a sports trial, Miss Amara, the physical education teacher, approached Adanna with an enthusiastic smile. Adanna, you'd be a fantastic addition to the swimming team. You're so dedicated and talented in every other area. You're the kind of all-rounder we need, she said, beaming. Adanna felt her heart race at the thought. She managed to maintain a polite smile, though, and replied gently, Thank you, ma'am, but I can't try out for the swimming team. Miss Amara looked at her with confusion, clearly surprised. Why not? This could be a wonderful opportunity for you, Adanna. One evening, as Adanna sat at the dinner table, she looked across at her parents with determination in her eyes. I need to know the truth, she said, her voice steady. Why can't I play in the rain? Why can't I swim? And why do my legs change when I bathe? I'm not a little kid anymore. I deserve answers. Emeka and Kioma exchanged worried glances, realizing the moment they had long feared had arrived. After a long, uneasy silence, Emeka finally took a deep breath and said, "Adanna, there's something we haven't told you, not to deceive you, but to keep you safe." Adanna's heart pounded as she looked at her parents, bracing herself for the truth. "Safe from what?" she asked, her voice wavering. Kioma took her daughter's hand, her gaze filled with both love and sorrow. "From people who wouldn't understand who you are," she said softly. Adanna looked even more puzzled. "What do you mean?" she asked, searching their faces. Kioma glanced at Emeka before speaking. "Do you remember the stories about the river goddess who blessed us with you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adanna nodded slowly, still confused. "Yes, you said she helped you when you couldn't have children." Emeka leaned forward, his expression serious but gentle. "That's true, but there's more. You are not just a blessing, Adanna. You're unique, you are connected to the water in ways others aren't. You're a mermaid." Adanna's eyes widened as she processed this new reality. "A mermaid like in stories?" "Yes," Emeka replied quietly. "Exactly like that." For a long moment the room was silent as Adanna tried to make sense of everything. "But how and why can't I just live like everyone else?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kioma squeezed her daughter's hand tightly. "You were born with a gift, Adanna. You have the ability to live both in water and on land, but the world can be harsh to those who are different. That's why we've tried so hard to protect you." Adanna felt tears welling up in her eyes as her mother's words sank in. "So I can't ever play in the rain with my friends, I can't swim?" Emeka nodded, his expression filled with sadness. "If too much water touches you, your legs will change. People might not understand, and they could react with fear or even harm you." Adanna wiped her tears, her heart heavy with the realization that her life would always be different. "So I'll never be like other kids," she whispered, feeling a deep sadness. Kioma reached out and stroked her hair. "You're special, Adanna, and that's something to be proud of." From that day, Adanna tried to come to terms with her secret. She stopped asking to join pool parties or run in the rain. She focused her energy on her studies, determined to succeed in the areas where she could safely excel. However, school life wasn't always kind to her. King's Academy had a strong sports program, and swimming was one of its highlights. With her grace and athletic talent, many believed Adanna would be a perfect addition to the swimming team, and her teachers encouraged her to join. One day, Miss Amara, her physical education teacher, approached her before a sports tryout. "Adanna, you'd be amazing on the swimming team. You're such a dedicated student and talented athlete. Why don't you give it a try?" Adanna forced a polite smile, her heart sinking at the invitation. "Thank you, ma'am, but I just don't enjoy swimming," she replied, hoping to end the conversation. Miss Amara looked puzzled but let it go. From that moment on, rumors began to spread like wildfire around the school. Her classmates couldn't understand her refusal and started twisting her words, creating a wave of gossip. "She thinks she's too good for us," muttered one of the girls, Tara, during recess. "She's perfect at everything else, so swimming must be beneath her too." Another girl, Nadia, known for her mean-spirited jokes, chuckled, "Or maybe she's just afraid she'll mess up for once." The whispers soon grew into something darker. The jealousy simmering among her classmates started boiling over, and the more Adanna excelled, the more isolated she felt. Each time she walked into a classroom, she could feel the cold stares, and her locker became a target for cruel pranks. One afternoon, Adanna returned to her desk after a break, only to find her notebook ripped to pieces, its pages scattered on the floor like confetti. Her lunchbox had been overturned, its contents spilled across the desk in a messy heap. A group of girls stood nearby, giggling as they watched her reaction. "What is wrong with you all?" Adanna cried, tears brimming in her eyes. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" Nadia, the ringleader, smirked and leaned against a desk. Oh, look, the princess is upset. Maybe if you weren't so full of yourself, we'd let you be. Adanna knelt down to gather her things, her hands trembling as she tried to piece her belongings back together. I'm not full of myself, she whispered, but her words fell on deaf ears. The bullying only got worse. Every time she left her desk, the girls would sneak over and tear pages from her notebooks or scribble cruel messages on her books. No matter how often she replaced her supplies, they would find a way to ruin them. Each time she returned to her desk, it felt like a fresh wound, watching her hard work torn apart. One quiet afternoon, Nadia decided to take her bullying further. As Adanna sat in class reading, Nadia, chewing gum loudly, suddenly grinned as a nasty idea came to mind. Without hesitation, she took the gum out of her mouth and stuck it onto the cover of Adanna's favorite dictionary. Oops, Nadia said with a fake gasp, loud enough for the whole class to hear. Looks like it slipped. The class burst into laughter, and Adanna's heart sank as she looked at the sticky mess on her beloved dictionary. Her hands shook as she tried to peel the gum off, but it only spread across the pages, leaving a mark that couldn't be erased. Why are you like this? Adanna asked, her voice breaking. What did I ever do to you? Nadia crossed her arms and sneered. You exist, that's enough. Adanna considered telling a teacher, but she knew it would do little good. The other students wouldn't support her claims, and the teachers often brushed off incidents as childish drama. She felt a deep, gnawing sense of hopelessness. The isolation grew more intense with each passing day. One of the cruelest incidents happened on sports day. All the girls had gathered in the locker room to change into their sports uniforms when Adanna found herself targeted once again. She had chosen a quiet corner to change, hoping to avoid any trouble, but her bullies had other plans. Let's lock her in, Tara whispered to her friends as they watched Adanna enter a changing stall. Giggling, they waited until she was inside before sneaking over and locking the door from the outside. Adanna didn't notice at first, but when she finished changing and tried to leave, she found the door wouldn't budge. Hello, is someone there? She called out, her voice echoing in the empty locker room. She banged on the door harder. Please let me out. But the others had already left for the sports field, and her cries were swallowed by the silence. One afternoon, as Adanna listened to the distant sounds of the school games starting outside, a deep sense of panic set in. She had been pounding on the locked door of the changing stall, shouting and banging, but no one heard her. Her throat ached from calling for help, and her fists were sore from hammering against the door. Hours passed, and the games were nearly over by the time a few students wandered back into the locker room to grab their belongings. They found Adanna slumped on the floor, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Her throat was raw, and her hands were shaking from exhaustion. What happened? One of the girls asked, looking genuinely puzzled. They locked me in, Adanna whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, drained and defeated. She was too tired to explain further. The girls exchanged awkward glances but said nothing. They simply watched as Adanna slowly gathered her belongings, her face a mask of quiet sorrow. That day, something broke inside her. The constant bullying, the feeling of being trapped, both in that small space and within the limitations of her life, had worn her down to the core. Adanna wanted to tell her parents about everything she was going through. She yearned to run home, cry in her mother's arms, and ask her father why the world could be so cruel. But she held back. She feared that if they knew the truth, they might pull her out of school, or worse, decide to move somewhere far away to protect her. She couldn't bear the thought of uprooting her family, after they had sacrificed so much for her already. So she kept it all inside. Every day she returned home, she put on a brave face, but the weight of her secret, and the cruelty she faced began to feel suffocating. The bullying didn't stop there, it only intensified. Fiseo, the ringleader who seemed to take pleasure in tormenting her, found new ways to make Adanna's life miserable. During one free period, Adanna was focused on her assignment, trying her best to ignore the snickering sounds from the back of the room where Fiseo sat. Just as she started writing, she felt something sticky land on her shoulder. It was gum. "Oops," Visio said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "Guess it slipped." The entire class erupted in laughter, and Adanna's face flushed with embarrassment. She wanted to scream or cry, but she knew it would only make her a bigger target. Instead, she sat in silence, her vision blurring with tears. She reached up with trembling fingers to pull the gum off her shoulder, each tug feeling like a fresh wound. "Maybe if you weren't such a lone wolf, this wouldn't happen," Visio muttered, just loud enough for Adanna to hear. Adanna peeled the gum off slowly, feeling utterly defeated. She didn't even bother reporting the incident to a teacher. What was the point? No one seemed to believe her or care enough to step in and stop it. Her classmates looked on, some with amusement and others with pity, but no one dared to intervene. It was easier for them to ignore the cruelty than to stand up for someone they saw as different, someone they envied. Then came the school's prize-giving day, an event that every student, teacher, and parent looked forward to. On this special day, the grounds of King's Academy were filled with people dressed in their best outfits. The excitement in the air was palpable as parents, teachers, and students gathered for the ceremony. The principal, Mr. Oak, stepped up to the podium to begin the event, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Today," Mr. Oak announced, his voice filled with pride, "we celebrate the academic achievements of our brightest students. It is a day to honor hard work, brilliance, and perseverance." The students sat eagerly, hoping to hear their names called for awards. Many had worked hard throughout the year, hoping to be recognized among the top performers. For Adanna, the day felt oddly familiar. She had stood on this stage many times before, her name echoing as the school's top student, always excelling. As the ceremony began, Mr. Oak started calling the names of students who had performed exceptionally well in various subjects. The awards for subjects like math, physics, and chemistry were announced one by one. Then, the principal's voice boomed through the microphone. "Adanna Mwasu," he called out, smiling warmly. "First place in mathematics." The crowd erupted in applause as Adanna rose from her seat with grace, making her way to the stage. Her parents, Emeka and Kioma, followed closely behind, beaming with pride as they watched their daughter receive her award. The applause seemed endless as Adanna accepted her prize, and for a moment, all the bullying and isolation faded away. In that brief moment on stage, she felt a sense of belonging and acceptance that she had yearned for all year. But as she made her way back to her seat, she noticed Visio and her group of friends sitting in the back, smirking and exchanging whispers. Adanna's heart sank, realizing that this moment of joy was fleeting. The applause, the admiration, it all felt like a fragile illusion. The ceremony continued with Adanna receiving awards in multiple subjects. With each award, the applause grew, and her parents' pride shone even brighter. But the more she succeeded, the more isolated she felt. Her classmates' jealousy had turned into resentment, and the whispers grew louder, fueled by envy. As the ceremony concluded, Adanna lingered near the edge of the crowd, watching as other students laughed and celebrated with their friends. She stood alone, clutching her awards, feeling an ache in her heart that no trophy could fill. That evening, as Adanna walked home with her parents, Emeka noticed the quiet sadness in her eyes. "You did amazing today," he told her gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We're so proud of you, Adanna." Kioma smiled warmly, brushing a stray strand of hair from Adanna's face. "You've worked so hard, you deserve every bit of this success." Adanna forced a smile, grateful for their support, but her heart was heavy. She wanted to tell them everything: the bullying, the isolation, the feeling of being trapped between two worlds. But once again, she chose silence, not wanting to burden them with her struggles. In the weeks that followed, Adanna tried to focus on her studies, pouring herself into her work as a way to escape. She knew that as long as she excelled, she could keep a part of herself safe from the cruelty of her peers. But the loneliness lingered, a constant reminder of the price she paid for being different. One afternoon, as she walked past the river near her home, Adanna felt a strange pull towards the water. She remembered her parents' warnings, the stories of the river goddess who had blessed her life, but also marked her as different. She knelt by the riverbank, gazing at her reflection in the clear water, and for the first time, she felt a longing to embrace the part of herself that she had kept hidden. Adanna closed her eyes, feeling the cool breeze against her skin, and let the memory of her parents' words wash over her. "You're special, Adanna," her mother had said. "More special than anyone else." At that moment, she understood the true weight of her secret. It wasn't just about hiding her identity from others. It was about finding a way to embrace who she truly was, even in a world that might never understand. The river was quiet, its surface calm, as if holding its breath, waiting for her to make a choice. Adanna smiled faintly, realizing that, despite the challenges, she held a strength within her that no one could take away. She was a daughter of the river, a child of two worlds. And though the road ahead would be difficult, she knew that her journey was just beginning. From that day on, Adanna resolved to face her struggles with resilience. She no longer let the whispers and insults define her. She was determined to carve her own path, finding solace in her heritage and strength in her uniqueness. As Adanna stood proudly on stage with her parents beside her, a photographer captured the moment, a memory her family would cherish. This ceremony felt like just the beginning, as Adanna's name echoed throughout the hall again and again. Adanna Nwasu, first place in physics. Adanna Nwasu, first place in chemistry. Each time her name was called, her parents joined her on stage, and the applause grew louder. Emeka and Kioma were thrilled, though it was a bit tiring going up and down the stage so many times. In total, Adanna's name was announced 18 times. She had come first in every subject that year. After one of these trips back to their seats, Emeka chuckled and kissed his daughter on the cheek. "Adanna, my star, don't you get tired of winning?" he teased, his eyes twinkling with pride. Adanna smiled, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Maybe a little," she admitted, "but it's worth it. I worked hard." "And it truly shows," Kioma said, giving her daughter a warm hug. "We couldn't be prouder of you, my love." In that moment, Adanna felt a surge of happiness. All the pain and stress from bullying and her secret faded away. She had earned this recognition through hard work and dedication, and the love and pride in her parents' eyes filled her with joy. But while Adanna and her family celebrated, not everyone in the crowd shared their happiness. Theseo and her group of friends, who had always harbored jealousy toward Adanna, sat together in the back, their expressions sour and resentful. With each award Adanna received, their jealousy only grew. "Can you believe this?" Theseo muttered to her friend Tara, unable to hide her irritation. Aching words, "Who does she think she is?" Tara rolled her eyes. "She thinks she's better than everyone else. That's what, look at her up there, acting like she owns the place." Theseo clenched her fists. "Just wait until next term," she whispered with a hint of malice. "We'll make sure she doesn't feel so special." The others nodded in agreement. The prize-giving ceremony eventually came to an end, and although Theseo and her group couldn't stand it, they were forced to clap politely when Adanna was announced as the top student of the year. As the crowd dispersed and students headed home for the holiday break, Theseo turned to her friends, a sly grin on her face. "Let her enjoy her little moment," she sneered. "When we come back, things are going to be different. We'll make sure of it." For Adanna, the holiday break was a welcome escape from the daily pressures of school. She pushed the memory of the bullying to the back of her mind and focused on enjoying time with her family. Her favorite part of the holiday was swimming in the privacy of their home pool, a space where she could truly be herself, free from judgment. In the water, Adanna felt a sense of peace and freedom. She loved the magical transformation that happened whenever she was fully submerged. Her legs would shimmer and gradually turn into her beautiful mermaid tail, glistening under the sunlight as she swam effortlessly. The sensation of gliding through the water with her tail made her feel weightless and truly herself. From the poolside, Emeka and Kilma watched their daughter swim, pride and worry evident on their faces. "She's so beautiful," Kilma murmured, her eyes following Adanna's graceful movements in the water. "Look at how happy she is." Emeka nodded, though he was quiet for a moment. His heart was filled with love, but a shadow of fear lingered. "I know," he said softly, "but every time I see her like this, I can't help but worry." Kilma glanced at him, her brow furrowing in concern. "Worry about what?" "That someday, someone will find out," he admitted quietly. "What if someone sees her like this? The world isn't always kind to those who are different." Kilma sighed, squeezing his hand reassuringly. "I know, I feel the same fear sometimes, but we've kept her secret safe for this long, and she's always been so careful. We can't let our fears take away her happiness." Emeka nodded, holding her hand tightly. "You're right, she deserves to be happy, just like any other child." The holidays gave Adanna a chance to relax and recharge, and she felt ready to face a new term at school. However, Fiseo and her friends had not forgotten their plans. When the term started, Adanna quickly sensed that the tension had only intensified. But Adanna reminded herself of who she was, the pride her parents held for her, and the strength that came from being unique. And no matter how difficult things got, she knew she had a family who loved her unconditionally, and a part of herself that was more magical than anything her classmates could ever understand. As Adanna glided through the water, her laughter filled the air, echoing across the peaceful garden. Emeka and Kilma watched their daughter from the poolside, their hearts swelling with pride and love. She was their miracle, their beautiful, brilliant child, and nothing could take that away from them. "Mom, Dad, look at this," Adanna called excitedly, performing a graceful flip in the water, her shimmering tail catching the sunlight. "Beautiful, sweetheart," Kilma cheered, clapping her hands. "You're amazing." Emeka chuckled, a playful glint in his eyes. "Just don't show off too much. We wouldn't want the neighbors to get too curious." Adanna laughed, feeling light and carefree. For now, she didn't have to think about bullies or the burden of her secret. In the water, she was free. But as the day of returning to school approached, Adanna felt a knot of anxiety growing in her stomach. Her peaceful holiday was coming to an end, and the thought of facing school, and Fiseo and her gang, filled her with dread. As she got ready that Monday morning, she briefly considered telling her parents everything about the bullying. She knew they'd understand and protect her, even if it meant pulling her out of King's Academy. But she couldn't bear the thought of disrupting their lives or moving from the home she loved. So, Adanna stayed silent. Walking into school, Adanna felt her steps grow heavier as she approached her classroom. She prepared herself for the usual mocking jeers, the whispers, and the cruel pranks that had haunted her last term. She braced herself, expecting Fiseo and her friends to make her life difficult yet again. But something unusual happened. Instead of the cold glares and insults she expected, Fiseo approached her with an unusually wide smile, followed by her group of friends. The friendliness on their faces was unsettling, and Adanna felt a wave of suspicion. "Adanna." Fiseo greeted her, her voice sweet and cheerful. "Good morning, my friend." Adanna stopped in her tracks, confused by the sudden shift in tone. She hadn't expected this at all. Her guard went up, and she instinctively clutched her bag tighter. "What do you want, Fiseo?" she asked, glancing at the other girls, whose smiles looked just as fake. Fiseo batted her eyelashes innocently, pretending to be hurt. "What do you mean, what do I want? Can't I say good morning to you without being accused of something?" Adanna narrowed her eyes. This was obviously an act. Fiseo had never shown her this kind of friendliness before. "You're not fooling anyone, what's really going on?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Fiseo let out a dramatic sigh, exchanging glances with her friends before leaning in closer to Adanna. "All right, fine, I'll be honest with you, we need your help," she admitted. "Help?" Adanna repeated, raising an eyebrow. Help with what? It's simple, really, Faseo said in a low voice, almost conspiratorial. You're the smartest girl in school and you always get the highest grades. Some of us aren't as lucky. Adanna crossed her arms, a frown forming on her face. So, what exactly are you asking me to do? Faseo's smile turned sly, and her tone grew more direct. We want you to let us copy your answers during the exams. Adanna's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't be serious. Oh, we're very serious, Faseo replied smoothly, her smile never faltering. If you let us copy, we'll all do well in the exams. No one will bother you anymore. You won't have to worry about us causing you any trouble. In fact, we'll make sure no one bullies you ever again. Adanna's stomach twisted. The nerve of Faseo to ask her to cheat after all the torment they had put her through was beyond anything she could have imagined. I'm not doing that, Adanna said firmly, standing her ground. I won't involve myself in any kind of cheating or exam malpractice. Faseo's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. Think about it, Adanna. This could be good for everyone. You wouldn't have to deal with the bullying anymore, and we'd all get good grades. Everyone win. Adanna repeated firmly, I'm not going to help you cheat, her voice colder now. And I'm certainly not scared of any threats you make. Faseo's expression darkened with anger, though she tried to keep her voice steady. So, you're really refusing my offer? Yes, Adanna replied without hesitation, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. I won't do it. Faseo's fake friendliness vanished, her face twisting with fury. You'll regret this, Adanna. You think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Well, we'll see how long that lasts. Adanna didn't back down, even though her pulse quickened. Do whatever you want, Faseo. I'm not compromising my principles for you. Faseo sneered, her lips curling with disdain. You think you're so perfect, but you're going to wish you'd agreed, you'll see. With that, she spun on her heel, storming off with her friends trailing behind her. Adanna watched them leave, her heart racing as she realized she had just made a powerful enemy. Later that day, as Faseo and her group gathered for lunch, Faseo couldn't contain her frustration. She replayed the conversation in her mind, growing angrier with each thought. Can you believe her? She spat, glaring down at her lunch. She thinks she's so perfect, turning us down like that. She's always acted stuck up, Tara muttered, rolling her eyes. I knew she wouldn't help us. She's too much of a goody-goody for that. Faseo clenched her fists, barely holding back her anger. We have to do something about her. She can't get away with disrespecting us. What can we do? One of the other girls asked, leaning closer. She's too smart to trick during exams and the teachers love her. Suddenly, a sinister grin spread across Faseo's face. I know exactly what we're going to do. The other girls leaned in eagerly, waiting to hear her plan. Do you all know Raymond? Faseo asked in a low voice, sounding conspiratorial. Tara frowned. Raymond, the senior, he's your cousin, right? Faseo nodded. Exactly, he's charming, smart, and no one knows we're related. He's perfect. Perfect for what? Tara asked, her curiosity piqued. We're going to make Raymond get close to Adanna, Faseo said, her grin widening. He'll act like he's interested in her, maybe even make her think he really likes her, and once she's fallen for it, we'll humiliate her in front of the whole school. The girls gasped, their faces lighting up with excitement. That's brilliant, Tara exclaimed. She won't see it coming. But what if Raymond doesn't agree? Another girl asked cautiously. Oh, he'll agree, Faseo replied confidently. He owes me a favor, trust me, by the end of this term, Adanna won't know what hit her. That evening, after school, Faseo found Raymond in the school parking lot, leaning casually against a car with his friends. He was one of the most popular guys in school, and Faseo knew that his charm would be the perfect tool for her plan. Raymond, she called out, waving as she approached him. Raymond looked up, surprised to see her. "What's up, Fiseo?" "I need a favor," Fiseo said, glancing at his friends. "Can we talk alone?" Raymond raised an eyebrow, but nodded, motioning for his friends to give them some space. Once they were alone, Fiseo explained her plan in detail, outlining everything she wanted him to do. When she finished, Raymond stared at her, shocked. "You want me to pretend to like some girl just to embarrass her?" "Not just any girl," Fiseo replied. "Adanna." Raymond's eyebrows shot up. "You mean the smart girl who wins all the awards?" "Exactly," Fiseo said, crossing her arms. "She turned me down and humiliated me, and I want her to pay for it. You're the only one who can help." Raymond hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Fiseo, this seems cruel." "She deserves it," Fiseo insisted. "And you won't even have to do much. Just get close to her, make her think you're interested, and we'll handle the rest. It's harmless." Raymond frowned, still uncertain. "I'm not sure." "Please, Caleb," Fiseo insisted. "I wouldn't ask if it weren't important, remember, I've helped you out before." After a long pause, Caleb reluctantly agreed, though he looked far from pleased. "All right, fine, I'll do it, but only because I owe you." Fiseo grinned, satisfied. "Good, trust me, this is gonna be worth it." The following week, Caleb began to put Fiseo's plan into action. At first, it was subtle. He would accidentally bump into Adanna in the hallways, offer to walk her to class, or sit nearby in the cafeteria. Adanna, who had been feeling lonely and isolated for so long, found herself cautiously opening up to him. Caleb was charming, funny, and always knew just how to make her laugh. It didn't take long for them to become friends, and Adanna felt genuinely happy to have someone in her corner. The warmth of having Caleb around helped her forget the bullying and loneliness she had endured. Little did she know, there was a cruel plan unfolding behind her back. As the days turned into weeks, Fiseo and her group of bullies watched with satisfaction. Fiseo couldn't hide her smug smile as she whispered to her friends, "It's working, Adanna doesn't have a clue." "She actually thinks Caleb likes her," Tara chuckled. "This is going to be too easy." By the end of the month, Fiseo decided it was time to escalate the plan. She cornered Caleb after school, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's time to wrap this up," she told him. Caleb, who had started to feel increasingly guilty, frowned. "Wrap it up how?" Fiseo smirked. "Get her to send you a picture, something you know, in her underwear." Caleb's eyes widened in shock. "What? Are you serious? Why would I do that?" Fiseo rolled her eyes, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "We'll make copies of the picture and post them around school. She'll be so embarrassed she won't ever show her face here again." Caleb shook his head, stepping back. "No way, that's crossing a line." Fiseo's smile vanished, her voice turning sharp. "What do you mean, no way? This was the plan, Caleb. You're supposed to get close to her and make her regret everything." Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know that's what you wanted, but things have changed. I've gotten to know her. Fiseo, she's not what we thought. She's actually really nice." "So what?" Fiseo snapped. "I don't care how nice she is. She humiliated me, and I want her to pay. You're not backing out now." Caleb's expression hardened. "I'm not going to hurt her like that. I'm done with this." Fiseo's face turned red with anger. "So, you're really going to ruin this for us, after everything I've done for you?" "Yes," Caleb said firmly. "I'm not going to humiliate her. I actually like her. She doesn't deserve this." Fiseo glared at him, fists clenched. "If you don't do it, I'll tell her everything. I'll tell her that you only became friends with her because I told you to. She'll hate you." Caleb stood his ground, unfazed by her threats. "Do what you want, Fiseo. I'm not going through with this." Furious, Fiseo stormed off, leaving Caleb standing alone, wrestling with a storm of emotions. He knew what he had to do. The next day, Caleb found Adanna sitting alone by the school garden, reading quietly. Her face brightened when she saw him approach, but Caleb's heart sank, knowing that what he had to say would hurt her. "Adanna," he began, his voice filled with remorse, "there's something I need to tell you." Adanna looked up, smiling. "What is it, Caleb?" Taking a deep breath, he sat down beside her. "I haven't been honest with you about why we became friends." Adanna's smile faded, a look of confusion crossing her face. "What do you mean?" At first, Caleb confessed, his voice barely a whisper, "I got close to you because of Fiseo. She asked me to befriend you as part of a prank. She wanted to humiliate you, and I went along with it." Adanna's heart dropped as she looked at him, a wave of disbelief washing over her. "Why would you do that?" "I thought it was just harmless fun," Caleb admitted, his voice shaking with guilt. "But as I got to know you, I realized how wrong I was. You're kind, Adanna, and you didn't deserve any of this. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." Adanna was silent for a moment, her eyes filling with tears as she processed his words. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The one person she had trusted had been part of Fiseo's cruel plan. But here he was, telling her the truth, remorse clear in his eyes. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I trusted you." "I know," Caleb said, his voice thick with regret. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I care about you, Adanna, and you deserve so much better than what we tried to do." Adanna wiped a tear from her cheek, her heart heavy. "I don't know if I can just forget this, but thank you for being honest." "Please, just be careful," Caleb warned her gently. "Fiseo isn't done. She's still looking for ways to hurt you." "I'll be careful," Adanna replied, her voice unsteady. "But I can't believe she would go this far." The next day at school, Fiseo and her group of bullies were preparing to confront Adanna, eager to see her humiliated. Fiseo had been seething since her argument with Caleb, determined to get the last laugh. As the bullies approached Adanna during lunch, smug smiles plastered across their faces, Fiseo called out, "Adanna, what a fool you've been." But Adanna, who had expected this confrontation, stood her ground. "I already know everything, Fiseo," Caleb told me. Fiseo's grin faltered. "What?" "He told me about your plan," Adanna said, her voice steady. "And he also told me what you tried to make him do." The other bullies exchanged confused glances as Fiseo's face flushed red with anger. "So what? You think you've won just because he told you?" she sneered. "You're still nothing, Adanna. Just wait." But before she could finish, a dark idea took root in Fiseo's mind. Her anger, simmering all along, finally boiled over. Without another word, she stormed off toward the restroom, her mind clouded by rage. The bullies watched in surprise as Fiseo returned carrying a large bucket of water, her face twisted with fury, her eyes filled with a malicious glint. "Where's Adanna?" she snapped at her friends. One of them nervously pointed toward the classroom where Adanna had retreated after their confrontation. Ignoring her friends' murmurs, Fiseo stormed into the classroom, carrying the bucket of water. She found Adanna sitting at her desk, unaware of what was coming. Fiseo marched right up to her and, without warning, slapped her across the face, the sound echoing in the silent room. Before Adanna could react, she noticed the bucket in Fiseo's hand, and her eyes widened in fear. "Fiseo, stop," she cried. But Fiseo, driven by anger and a twisted need for revenge, lifted the bucket and poured its entire contents over Adanna's head. "No," Adanna screamed, but it was too late. The transformation happened instantly. As the water soaked her skin, Adanna's legs began to shimmer and shift, transforming into a beautiful, glistening tail covered in iridescent scales. Her feet disappeared, replaced by a tail that gleamed in shades of blue, green, and silver, catching the light. The entire classroom froze, stunned into silence as Adanna's secret was revealed. Her mermaid form sparkled under the dim classroom lights, her tail reflecting the colors of the ocean. The room erupted into chaos. Students screamed, chairs clattered to the floor, and within seconds, everyone was scrambling for the door. The sight of Adanna as a mermaid was too shocking, too otherworldly for them to comprehend. Theseo stood there, rooted to the spot, her face pale with shock. She had wanted to hurt Adanna, but she hadn't expected this. As students fled the room in a panic, Adanna's eyes filled with fury as she looked at Theseo. Her entire body trembled as she struggled to process what had just happened. Outside, the sky darkened, and a sudden clap of thunder shook the air, rattling the windows. Suddenly, the very walls of King's Academy seemed to tremble. The school gate swung shut with a forceful clang, and no one, neither students nor teachers, could leave the grounds. Adanna's voice echoed through the room, filled with anger and power. "You have no idea what you've done, Theseo." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the classroom as the walls continued to shake. And for the first time, Theseo felt true fear as she looked into Adanna's fierce, unyielding gaze.